people come up with a definition of following. A tzaddik is someone who's very observant in the mitzvahs. He keeps the mitzvahs. You know, everything which is possible, and he adheres to the Shulchan Aruch meticulously. You see, but is that an adequate definition of what a tzaddik is? No. Why? Because that is a behavioral definition of a tzaddik. That tells us what a tzaddik does, but it really doesn't tell us what a tzaddik is. If a person, when I mean a tzaddik, you know what the word tzaddik means? The word tzaddik means a righteous person. Okay? Or a tzaddik if it's a woman. Okay? That is the object of what any Jew should be. If you want a word which incorporates the central objective of what a Jew should be, every man should be a tzaddik, every woman should be a tzaddikah. The word comes from the word tzaddak, to be righteous, to do right. The way we understand the tzaddik behaviorally is someone who does 613 mitzvahs. You see, meticulously. I don't mean sloppily. I mean meticulously. He is knowledgeable about all the halachas. He knows all the halachas, and he practices them very, very carefully. But that is not really the definition of a tzaddik. Because a tzaddik is not a behavioral description. It doesn't refer to certain types of activities of a person. A tzaddik really is an experiential level. A tzaddik is a level of experience. Not so much a composite of activities or behaviors. What do I mean? What is the essence of being a Jew really? What does it mean that someone is Jewish, Orthodox? What does it mean to be Jewish really? Or what it says in the Torah, this word. Yirat Shamayim. I'm sure you all heard that word, the fear of heaven. What does it take to be a Yirat Shamayim? To be cognizant of God and to follow His dictates. A tzaddik is a Yirat Shamayim. What does that really mean? Essentially, a tzaddik is a level of experience. What kind of experience? When God says to the people, the Jews, that He wants them to observe the Torah, He is saying something really more fundamental. What the Baruch Shem really wants is to establish an intimate relationship with every individual person. Intimate meaning an experiential feeling relationship. God wants to be close to each and every person. And He wants you to be close to God. Being close to God is not only following His will from a behavioral standpoint, doing the mitzvahs, but it's understanding who He is, number one, and having the ability to love Him, number two. Now, what does that incorporate? How can you love God? What does that mean? How can you love a being who you cannot even see? You see, God is invisible. Invisible, it's not capable of being sensed. How do you love that which is not really capable of being sensed at all? We have problem loving other people who are there, who are concrete. What does that mean? Does that sound like some kind of a abstract notion? Well, you're supposed to love God. That sounds nice. But what does that mean, you're supposed to love God? Is that possible? Now, if you read the Shema says, V'hafta Shem And thou shalt love the Lord thy God with all thy soul, all thy heart, all thy soul, and all thy might. It's a commandment. One of the 650 commandments is that you have to love God. Well, how do you command someone to love someone else? Is that possible to be commanded? If you walk over a person and says to a man, I command you to love that woman. What do you command me? You can force me to marry the woman. Or whatever. You can't force me to love a woman. Or vice versa. It's not possible. Love cannot be commanded. So how can God say, I command you to love me? What does it mean? The essence of a tzaddik lies really in his ability to love God. The truth of the matter is, that's really where it's all at. No more, no less. To the extent that he loves God, to that extent, that will influence the type of practices or patterns of behavior that he will have. Yes. I can't hear you. What?
We usually don't think of a tzaddik or a tzaddik as someone who is weak, strength.
What do you mean by weak? Weak in what?
We usually think of it as a person who's strong. He holds on and he observes well with himself, and he has.
Well, we said a tzaddik observes all the mitzvahs. We said that.
Right. Okay. That's what I'm saying. Okay.
Oh, okay.
So I think that it's very possible for you to have a great love for Hashem, but be a weak person in the sense that you don't necessarily or can't keep the mitzvot.
Okay, that's an interesting point. Is it possible to love God and be very poor in observance? That's an interesting question.
You show it, your love to him through experiencing the quality of your mitzvah.
Yes, in any way that's true. But let's just answer the more fundamental questions. How is it possible to love God? What does that mean? And how is such a thing able to be commanded? The answer lies in your relation to God and who you are. Essentially, you are composed of two antagonistic substances. You are composed of a body, which is physical substance, and you have a neshama, which is composed of spiritual substance. These two were joined together forcefully, without their consent. They were joined together, and they have to remain together for all time. We will not go into why that is. But that creates a very unique type of creature. It creates a creature who has enormous capacity to do many things in different ways. It creates a person who can follow his guf, his body, or can follow his neshama. The neshama, since it was created by God and is spiritual, has an intrinsic ability to sense God. Literally senses him. The guf cannot, or in a very, very minute way. The neshama senses God directly, and is aware of the spirituality of God through itself. It literally experiences God in a very profound, direct way. Since you all have neshamas, whether you realize it or not, you can literally experience God in an enormously powerful way. If you did not have neshamas, you couldn't do it. But since you have neshamas, you can reach a level of awareness which is beyond your body. What is that? To be a real Jew is to open up the eyes of the neshama. It's, in other words, to feel what the neshama feels while it's joined to the body. That's essentially the mechanics. Is it possible? It is. And what happens is that the neshama develops a very intense awareness of God. This results in a very profound feeling of love in the person himself. automatically have that feeling? Yes and no. It depends on how powerful the neshama is. Some people are born with it. Some people are born with neshamas on such powerful levels that they already sense the existence and have the love for God. Most people do not sense that. Today, in our world, it is almost non-existent. No matter what neshama you have, the level of the capacity to love God is very, very small. Can you expand it? Yes. But most people are given a very minute level. What does it mean to love God? The key word is this, and this is a very, very critical word. If you remember anything from this year, remember this word. Dvekus. What does the word dvekus mean? The word dovek is to cling, to adhere, to attach it. That's what the word dovek means. To attach oneself. Dvekus refers to the state of awareness of God. It refers to the intimate relationship which a Jew establishes with the Baruch Shem. That is called dvekus. That is what a tzaddik has. The dvekus of a person has many levels. You can distinguish a person one level to another by his level of dvekus. Now, dovek means to be attached to or cling, to adhere. What is this feeling of dvekus? What am I talking about? If we want to understand what it means to love God, we've got to look at what it means to love another person. Because fundamentally that's really where it's at. There are many different types of love. But the fundamental relationship which is closest to the love of God is the love between a man and woman. In fact, in the most parts of the Torah, God and Israel, God and the Jews, are symbolically represented by the metaphor of a man and woman. Like in Song of Songs, Shir Hashirim. The whole thing is about a man and woman. But it's not really about a man and woman. It's really about God and Israel. God being the male, the husband, and the Jews being the female or the wife. You say, by the Chododi, God should rejoice in me as a husband, a bridegroom rejoices in his kala. You see again the exact parallel. When you examine the feelings of love, you see, when they're strong, what are some of its properties, really? What does it mean to love another person? What does it mean that a man loves a woman, or that a woman loves a man? How does that manifest itself really? Well, there's certain basic criteria to it, you see. What are they? Number one, there's a very powerful desire to always be with that other person. And when you're not with that other person, you feel a certain loss. There's a loss literally in terms of your own sense of self. It's like you're lacking something. When you love someone in that way, and you're not with that person, you feel like an emptiness, or there's a lack. There's something missing, and you don't feel whole. That's number one. The second thing is that what you like to do is you like to think about that other person. And just thinking about that other person brings you a certain simcha, or an intense pleasure. It's an amazing thing. When you love someone, to think about that other person brings pleasure. It's like you can sit there and think about that other person and literally be in an ecstatic state. It's fun, it's like a turn-on type of situation. But that's real love. I'm not talking about just general infatuations or affection. I'm talking about really loving another person. You get a simcha or tremendous pleasure just by contemplating the other person. There is a loss, you see, when the other person is not around. And you identify yourself with that other person. The love that you have for another person allows you to be aware of that other person's existence in a very fundamental way, you see. You know that other person, you know that he is. You know his reality in a very powerful way. To love a person means that you think of the other person in terms of what you can give, or what you can do for the other person. That's very critical. True love does not involve taking. It involves giving. Because the taking is the experience of love itself. That's the subtlety. Just to love for another person and think about that other person and derive the pleasure of that is the taking. Being in love or loving is the taking itself. But in actuality, what you want to do is give. Fundamentally, there's another law. When that person is happy, you're happy. You can literally experience the pleasure or the happiness, the simcha of that other person. When that person's happy, you're happy. If that person's in pain, you're in pain. It's like Siamese twins. All these are features of being in love with someone else.
Also, the other person
Yes.
is perfect. The other person is simple. I mean, in the love that you experience, I mean, you can say all the things about the person that make you like them or make you love them, right? But in the inner meaning of the love, inside that love, the person is the unity. The person is simple.
Yes, right. It's a unity. There's a process there, right? You don't love the person because of this quality, that quality, this quality. Love is not a composite, composed of a number of qualities to say, well, since he's got quality A, B, C, D, I love him. That's absurd. The truth is you love him many times in spite of the qualities. Because he may have a D, E, F, which are horrible qualities, and you'll still love him, you see. Or her. These are some of the descriptions of properties what we say love is. Now, what does that have to do with God? The answer is that it is possible to reach a level of feeling or experience which literally has every one of these features. Even though God is invisible. How? Because you have a neshama. When that neshama is opened up, you feel about God, literally, in your cases, like you would feel about your husband when you, on the day of your marriage. That's the kind of feeling you have for God, except one difference. There's one difference. That when you achieve a true level of dvekas, of love of God, you see, the intensity is probably several hundred times greater than the maximum you can get for your husband. That sounds incredible. That's what it is. That's how powerful that experience is. Now, you have an idea of what I'm talking about. Is it possible for a person to experience this? Yes. But not at the outset. You've got to work towards it. It's not an easy thing to acquire. The level of tzaddikim literally differ by their ability to experience dvekas. You can have two people who are both big tzaddikim, yet one will be entirely different than the other because of this dvekas. If someone's on a level of dvekas and another one is on a higher level of dvekas, they are literally two different people. You see. It's like the difference of having affection for someone and really being in love with someone. Would you say that the experience is the same? No. Would you say that it's a quantitative difference? Also not. It's literally a qualitatively difference. Hence, a tzaddik literally will vary from another tzaddik qualitatively on the way he feels that. Now, could we give some kind of level to tzaddikim? Yes. We can give it some kind of a continuum level. Okay? remember these four terms. They're pretty popular terms. And I'd like you to understand the meaning of the four, specifically. Yoshua, Tzaddik, Chosed, Kadosh. Yoshua. The word Yoshua means straight. Straight. What is a Yoshua? A Yoshua is what most of us are. Well, hopefully. A Yoshua is a person who attempts to keep the Torah as best we can. When we daven, we try and daven with kavanah. Many times we fail. We wind up talking to someone else next to us. Or while we're davening, we think of everything else. We think of our problems, our jobs, our homes, our family. While we're davening, we do the best we can. You see. But we try and be basic Orthodox Jews. How do we feel God? Well, maybe on Yom Kippur we'll get inspired. We'll feel closer. Somehow, as if something is opened up in us, we'll feel a little deeper spirituality. Suddenly we'll feel like somewhat of a vague connection to God in some way on Yom Kippur, or maybe some other holiday or some other time. But most of the time throughout our lives when we walk around, we don't feel God at all. No. We don't. We feel our needs. We feel people. We feel what we have to do. We think of ourselves. God? Where? What? When I go to shul, suddenly I try and empty my head and say, let me think a little bit about what I'm saying here. You see. But even when we go to shul, we daven to God as an object. We're talking to someone outside of ourselves. We're not even feeling for God. We're talking to God. That's what most davening really is. When you really think about it, we talk to God. What we have a feeling is, please, listen to my prayers. You see. God is the master and you're the servant. God is the bestower and you are the one who is the receiver or inquiring. But you don't have any feelings about God. That's a strange question. What are your feelings about God? I talk to God, I daven, I pray, I ask him for things. What are you feeling about him? Yeah, I feel he created the world. I respect him. Yeah, I may even like him. You know, sometimes I don't like him. I don't like what he does to me or other people. Sometimes I do like him. What does that mean? That's the basic gist of it, you see. A tzaddik. A tzaddik is someone who does the mitzvah. He already feels God. A tzaddik is in love with God. There's a romance there. There is a literal romance. What does that mean, there's a romance? What am I talking about? A person who's reached the level of being a tzaddik doesn't think of God as shul. He thinks of God all the time. Not because he makes an effort to think about God. God is not a concept or a thought or an intellectual process. God is a feeling. Just like when you walk out and you have some loved one, he's always on your mind in one way or another, if the love is intense. Even when you're at your job. Really. That person is never far away from your mind. The same thing is with a tzaddik. A tzaddik feels God straight all the time. Because he feels God, he feels that love, he feels his existence. You don't have to prove to a tzaddik that God exists. Or the tzaddik says God exists. When you love God on the level that a tzaddik does, you know God exists without any conceptual proof. Because you know it experientially, not cognitively. If I go over to you, for example, or somebody goes over to you and takes a pin and says, you know when I strike this on a person, he experiences pain. And then he goes through a whole physiological description of pain, that's one thing. But another person would say, wait a minute, why not to describe this entire event intellectually here? You feel it. That feeling sums up the entire intellectual description of the event. The same thing. A tzaddik feels this intense love for God. God is always in his head. He's never off. He's always in his head. Not that he has to force himself to preoccupy himself with that thought. It's always there. It's like you always, when you're walking, you always see outside reality. You see people. Well, God is in mind, but it's not a sensation. There's no perception. You see, there's always an awareness of this being God and this intense love for that being, no matter what the person does. That's why the pasuk says, "Shiviti Hashem linegi tamid." The pasuk says, "Tell him you should always place God before your mind." Now, a Yosha would have very hard problems doing that, because for a Yosha to put God in front of his mind, to think about God, is an effort. It's an intrusion in his life, because his mind is everywhere else. So therefore, a Yosha sees God as a concept, you see, which therefore we would have to relate to intellectually. A Tzaddik automatically has God in front of his mind, all the time. Yes? What's that?
Is that you can have God in your mind all the time, or you can have a real like a relationship or romance where the person is always in your mind and yet you don't always please them the way they want to be pleased. Similarly, you can have a great kavanah and a great feeling for Hashem and not necessarily be a tzaddik in the sense of being so musty on your servant. And I think that they are two different things.
Yes, yes. But the truth about it is, it is possible.
It's more than possible.
Wait a minute. But you're going into a case of a deviation. Wait a minute. 1 second. There's a deviation here. It is possible to have strong feelings about God and not observe all the mitzvahs. That is true.
Or possibly.
Properly. Yes. But there are reasons for that. When a person has that, then he's said to be out of phase. Technically speaking, right, a person has to be in phase. Right? There's a certain activity called maisim or mitzvahs, like this. And there's something called feeling. These two are supposed to be coordinated. Your feeling about God must be parallel to your maisim, your mitzvahs. That's what it should be. A true tzaddik has them in coordination. His pneumius, his internal feelings, are coordinated with his chesonius, his outside, his activities. You see? It should be like that. There are deviations to the rule. But when there are deviations to the rule, it means that there is something which blocks, which does not allow him to parallel the feelings or coordinate the feelings with the maisim. Then you're talking about a negative factor, you see. These two should always be coordinated. And they normally are as the person gets deeper and deeper into ruchnius, spirituality. But if they're not, it means that there's another alien factor which is separating the two. There are many different factors like that. What would be such factors that would do it? Most of the time those factors are psychological. That's usually the culprit. Almost always. Psychological factors will literally rip the two apart. Where a person many times can feel strong feelings, but for some reason not be able to observe. Anxieties will do it. Attachment anxieties will do it. Insecurities. Immaturities, aggressive behavior. Psychological factors. You see. Obviously, a person who is not very mature, who has certain immaturities in his personality, can reach a level where he can feel certain things to God, but his immaturity will not allow him to have a sense of balance, really, with regard to those feelings. You see.
Why is it natural for these two elements to be in phase when you can grow up, well into your adult life with no knowledge of this at all? What is natural? What is, like medically in hearing about them being in phase?
You see, the problem is, these things are out of phase to certain. There are other factors that will take them out of phase. Another factor that will take it out of phase is that the neshama is greater than the environment. Meaning that the person has an neshama which is high, hence he has these feelings automatically. He already intuitively feels the presence of God in these feelings, but environmentally he's brought up in a situation where he doesn't know anything, or his observance is blocked, you see. That's another reason also why those things. Under normal conditions, these two should be in phase. Because if you feel certain things about God, you want to behave towards Him the way He wants you to. You want to do His wisdom. You want to fulfill His will. His will is the 613th commandment, the Tayyat mitzvahs, correct? Therefore what you will do is you will attempt to learn the mitzvahs, and you will attempt to do the mitzvahs as an expression of love. You see? You see what I'm saying? That's really what should be. The two should be concomitant.
Let me ask you this, Steve.
The stronger the love, the stronger the observance. And the stronger the observance, the stronger the love. It is a cycle, each acting on the other. I'll get into later on how to develop some of these things.
Can I just ask one more question? If you want to say one, you can say how does a person come to understand mitzvahs as expressions of the will of Hashem? Is that a knowledge that comes on some level experientially?
No.
The way that Allah Hashem comes?
No. The mitzvahs, the tightness themselves is not experiential. It is intellectual. You have to be taught that.
I don't mean the content. I don't mean the content of the mitzvahs, but the grounding of the mitzvahs. You know what I'm saying? I don't mean to understand what are the mitzvahs and how do you do them. I mean
the notion that there is a way.
The notion that the mitzvahs are the expression of the will of Hashem.
That's intuitive. To love God is automatically to know that there is a certain right way of living and there's a wrong way of living. Intuitively. That right way of living could figuratively called mitzvahs. Yes.
And there's no educating. Ultimately, a person is not educated into a grasp of mitzvahs in general as expression of will of Hashem. The locking onto mitzvahs as an expression of the will of Hashem is something that comes on an intuitive level as deeply true as love of Hashem comes on an intuitive level, on the Shema level.
Yes, basically.
You have to be on a level of or something like that to be able to
yes.
do that.
See, they say, the Medrash says that Avraham Avinu kept the entire Torah. That's what it says. How did Avraham Avinu keep the entire Torah? How do you know the mitzvahs? Now there are certain answers to that which I won't go into now. They're much deeper points, but fundamentally, one of the ways that Avraham knew, because he had established such a powerful level of Avos Hashem, or Tzaddik, is that he was able to understand what the mitzvahs were. So that's obviously an enormous level of Kedusha. Yes?
Yeah, I think one of the answers to my question is much as intuitive. If the love is there, that's a trend that has to be shown as you search, as you express it, like
Yes.
you have to be interested.
The path of Vegas is essentially an intuitive, experiential one, but it's also an intellectual one. You've got to know Torah. You've got to understand. The knowledge of Yichud HaBorei is here, not here. You know what I mean? No matter how much you love God, you will not necessarily know what to take 4A and 4B. Because that's an intellectual understanding. That's a grasp of ideas. You see? The true balance of a tzaddik lies in the balance between the intellectual and the experiential in an exact way. You see?
But intellectual, in a way, is an access that we need now because we've fallen so far away. There was a
Yes.
time when that was not given intellectually.
No, Levi, that pole is a stronger pole at this point. Yes. And the neshamas have become much smaller, and therefore our capacity to love God is very small these days. But every once in a while there's a freak that's born that's an incredible tzaddik, just at 6 or 7 years old. Sounds strange. Why?
So I'm just trying to figure out why we are so far away from the
That's, well, we've given a little bit of the answer to that. what we're trying to do is understand what we are far away from before we can understand why. Most people do not know what we are far away from. That's the real unglück. That's the real tragedy. You see. Most people have no idea where we are holding now spirituality. We go about our daily lives and our daily business, and we do not know what we've lost at all. The Beit HaMikdash. When the Beit HaMikdash existed, what do? We have celebrate Tisha B'Av. What happened on Tisha B'Av? We see that the Beit HaMikdash is destroyed. What happened? Some building with stones is broken down. Is that what happened? No. The Beit HaMikdash was a place where the spiritual force was very, very profoundly felt. When you would walk to the Beit HaMikdash, as soon as you were there, you would instantly feel an enormous debakis. Instantly, without even working for it. You'd suddenly be totally taken over by a massive feeling of debakis. Just to walk into the courtyard of the Beit HaMikdash. Why? Because the concentration of the Shekhinah, the concentration of that spirituality was much more. Hence the debakis, the neshama, it's like suddenly the neshama got a certain shot, an injection, and was instantly opened up. That's what we lost. There is no place in the world which we can go to experience that. Where can you experience that now? What? Kosa? A tiny bit? Okay. A little bit. Yes. Yes. People who've been to Israel, the Koso, they can experience, suddenly the heart begins to move. It becomes warm. Suddenly they begin to experience something about God. And invariably, there's a tremendous sadness. True Vegas always has profound sadness for them. Always. There's a reason for that. True Vegas is a feeling of God, but it's a feeling of the Shekhinah, which is the aspect of God which we feel. And that Shekhinah is in Golos, it's in exile. So when you begin to feel the Shekhinah and its vibration, so to speak, to use a 20th century word, you feel its state or its condition. And it's a condition of Golos or exile. Hence there's always a very powerful sadness which comes along with the ecstatic feeling of the love of God. How do you know if someone has Vegas or not? Let him talk about it. You can instantly see if he has it or not, or he knows what it is, just by the description alone.
The thing that when you're showing the Tzaddik, and I'm sure the other one too, was talking about, I'm coming from two words something like that. We're talking about a continuum.
Yes,
It
is a continuum. No. I've described it in different terms, but it's a continuum. No, I'll make that clear in the English. After you have a tzaddik, you have a chassid. But what's a chassid? I don't mean the chassid what you find today, the chassidim. That is not a chassid. The true meaning of the word chassid is beyond tzaddik. You see, what really is a chassid? Technically speaking, a chassid includes a kadosh. You see, what it means is following. A tzaddik has dvekas, intensely feels God, does the meticulously, as an expression of God. You see, I said, you must understand this, what a tzaddik is. When a tzaddik goes to Shul on Yom Kippur, it's totally different than when we go to Shul on Yom Kippur. We go to Shul on Yom Kippur, and if we're lucky, we're not talking, or whatever the story is, and we're in pain because we haven't eaten, or whatever the story is, what we do is, we try and sit there and we say to God, I'm sorry, I really feel bad, and so on. I mean, don't punish me, or whatever the story is. There's a very profound feeling of guilt, you see. Maybe I've done something wrong, I want to be better, I don't want to be punished, and so on. A tzaddik goes to Yom Kippur in a different way. A tzaddik goes the following. He is enormously disturbed. Why? Because he has caused the Rebbe Shalom Kaviyachol pain. And that causes him enormous pain. You see the difference? He cries bitter tears. Why? Because he has caused God to be in pain. Is God really in pain? No. God cannot experience pain. But, so to speak, he is caused a great sadness. And it bothers him. Because God says, do this, and he didn't do it. He didn't listen to the Baruch Shalom. That causes him pain. You see. He's not afraid for himself. He's afraid of being punished. You see? Or guilty of something. It's like, for example, take your parents. Imagine the parent that you feel closest to. If you see that parent in pain, well, how do you feel? Don't you feel terrible? Or say you're a child. If you see that a child of yours is in pain, how do you feel? You feel enormous pain yourself. When you see a child or your parent, you see, is in joy or is happy, that causes you a simcha. You want to produce good things to your child. You want to see him smile or what? Because it causes you to smile. You see, that's the kind of relationship that a tzaddik has with God. You see, his Yom Kippur is an entirely different experience. What's the chassid? Chassid is much higher than the tzaddik. His feelings of God are enormously more powerful. Why? Because a chassid has done something which the tzaddik has not. A chassid has withdrawn from Olam Hazeh. You can only go so far in establishing a relationship with God while you're in your body. The body blocks the neshama from truly experiencing God, and thus the person from truly feeling an intense love. But if you withdraw from bodily pleasures, if you withdraw from the body in this different ways, you don't run after its pleasures. You deny yourself food. I don't mean in terms of fasting, but you don't run after good foods. You know, tzaddikim, for example, who will take something and put salt over it so they don't taste the pleasure of the food. They don't want to involve their bodies or their minds in a pleasureful existence of the body. You may say, what does that do? What that does, it begins to lower the intensity of body feelings, and the neshama opens up wider, much wider. But that's the level of a chassid. Are you required to go to that level? No. The Baruch Shem says, I do not ask you of this level. I only ask you of this level. You see. But this level is a person who wants to go higher. This level is prerequisite to becoming a prophet. You can never become a prophet on that level. Only on that. You must become totally a spiritual being. A chassid is a different person than a tzaddik. You can no more talk about a chassid than a tzaddik, you see, as you can about a person and another person who is retarded with respect to intelligence. They are qualitatively two different beings.
Why doesn't the chassid die from that?
Because he eats. A chassid eats to live, to survive. He doesn't live to eat.
He does just the most minimal thing.
He does what's necessary to keep himself alive and in good health. And even then, it's all. That's what it is. His full concentration is on spiritual matters. It is the chassid who establishes Ruach HaKodesh. He is the one who begins to know what the future is about and begins to be able to read what goes on up there.
It almost seems like at that level you want to sever all attachment to the body.
Yes.
It really seems like it almost could have like this almost like a suicidal aspect.
Now, in a sense, the neshama would like to leave already. Yes. Right. The neshama has reached such a level of spirituality. Its awareness is so powerful now while you're in the body that the person as if he was drawn outward, you see. Yes, that's an enormously powerful feeling. Chassidim are not afraid of death in any sense of the word. Yes. Very, very true. I've met a number of them. I've observed. They're extraordinary men. I have never met a woman. I have met, well, it's hard to say because women are not. Yes, exactly. Women who are on that level are not public speakers. Men are. So, and I wouldn't have access. Yes, they were. So the thing is, it would probably be easy for a woman to spot that kind of woman than a man. You see. Are there women who have these feelings? Yes. I have met very few. I have met some women who are extremely sensitive. I don't think I've ever met more than this number of women in my entire life who have anything that's near this type of level. But I've met some. There was a time that there were many people on that level. 2,500 years ago, haven't I told you, there were over 1 million prophets. My God, that means there were over 1 million Jews who were on that level. Could you imagine that? Could you imagine living on a street where all your neighbors are Hasidim? It's astounding. What happened? We've lost that. The exile has taken that away from us. We've lost that ability to be there. This is a continuum. You see, you go from one level to another, but it's all invisible. It's invisible. You can't spot a tzaddik or chazan. You can't tell the difference between the two on the outside because it's all inside. It's an experience. I put on tefillin in the morning. Moshe Rabbeinu put on tefillin in the morning. You can't tell the difference between me and Moshe Rabbeinu, assuming that the acts were exactly the same. Can you? No. Not really, if we did it exactly the same way. You see. You couldn't. But, what? Is there a difference between me and Moshe Rabbeinu? Of course. Where that difference lies? Here. When Moshe put on tefillin, who knows what went on in his head? The way he related to God through that mitzvah, through that 1 billion light years from the way I would relate, let's say, to God from that experience. So where does the difference lie between these people? Inside, not outside. That's why I said to you that the fundamental definition of a tzaddik does not lie in a behavioral description, but in an inward, theistic description. Finally, a Kaddish. What is a Kaddish? Well, technically speaking, a Kaddish is really a chassid. I've only isolated it just to make 4 levels. Word Kadosh means holy. This man literally is holy. The man has reached such a level of withdrawal from the tyrants, the pleasures of this world, and he has such a tense level of vacancy to God that everything he does is touched with divinity. Are there people who participate on that level? Yes. Obviously, very few. Who would be an example of a Kaddish today? Well, I can give one example that I know personally. I don't know if you've heard his name, but I think the example. I spoke something about his lifestyle. His name is the Rivnitzer Rebbe. I don't know if you've heard of him. And he has quite a wide reputation. He's a very old man, but he is a Kaddish. He is a person with Ruach HaKodesh. But more than that, his lifestyle is extraordinary. Since he is 13 years old, until he was something like in his 80s, he has never eaten in the day, only at night, and taken one meal. He has maybe slept throughout his entire life 20 hours, 3 hours a night. When he goes to the mikvah, in an ice-cold thing, like in Siberia, where he comes from Russia, he used to break the ice and go down and turtle in the mikvah. You know what that is? Well, no, you have to have 3 meals. No. On a daily basis. An example of what kind of personality that is There's once I heard, once when he went to his room where he lived, to his bed to lie down, he saw a cat lying on his bed. Not wanting to disturb the cat, he slept on the chair. It's an extraordinary level of sensitivity to another person, to other living things, to ruchnius. It is an absolute, total preoccupation with God. No, he lives in New York. Months. His humility is extraordinary. And it's obvious. When I was in Israel, I went there this was about 15 years ago. There was a person that I went to see. My brother had told me about him. And he was a very interesting person. He was a very simple Jew. And he's no longer living. And he lived in Yerushalayim, in one of the little houses in Yerushalayim. And all of Yerushalayim knew that this man was a very posh person. And when I went there, I wanted to specifically see him. And it was known that years ago, there was a very big tzaddik, a very big kodesh, the Tzaddik Rebbe, I don't know if you know, who once said on this person, what? The Tzaddik Rebbe, I don't know if you heard him, that once said on him, on this fellow, he looks like what a Jew should be. And if the Tzaddik Rebbe said this, that's an incredible compliment. I want to see him. He's an old man. The experience of talking to this man was unbelievable. The man was almost like the man's humility and the kedusha. You could actually see it in the face. You could spot it. You could see it if you're sensitive to it. Because you can always see that even though they talk to you, their mind is somewhere else. You can see it in their eyes. You see. And the man was when I left this house and I went out, to see so on, I literally felt like it was hard to describe. Like I wanted to go from this house, I went into the street, a Jerusalem street. The hustle and bustle. I feel like there was a pain. I felt like I just left the Beit HaMikdash. I can literally understand. It's like you left somewhere where you were in it was like the house, the whole place was like infused with a certain type of spirit. And when you left, suddenly you were in the world of the physical and hustle and bustle. You could feel it. And I felt it. It was very disturbing to leave this house. Very disturbing, you see. But they say this man is Ruach Kodesh, you see. And I would easily agree. I mean, it's almost obvious. Ruach Kodesh means, Ruach Kodesh means the Holy Spirit. It's like a smaller level of prophecy. You know the future. You know things which you can read in the Shema. Many, many things. Extraordinary person. Simple Jew. There must be a lot of these people crawling around Yerushalayim that nobody knows about. If you want to find them, they're probably in Israel, you see, but they're probably hidden. Because these people don't publicize themselves. But they're extraordinary. When they say something, it generally happens. They can literally subvert reality. They can subvert it. Just to give you one example, a story, just to show you what happens when a person is on that level. Okay? This is a story I read from the witness of one of his Gaboim, his people who are with him. And what he told me was the following story that once, when the witness was in Los Angeles, he wanted to Mekadosh Levana. Okay? Once a month, you have to say some tefillahs of the Levana, that the Baruch should restore the Jews back to their redemption, to Israel, and that the moon should be in its full phase and so on. I won't go into that. Kiddush Levana. In order to do that, you have to see the moon. You have to be able to see the moon. If you don't see the moon, you can't Mekadosh Levana. You can't see those prayers. So in Los Angeles, with the notorious smog of Los Angeles, the sky was black. There were no stars even. They looked around. They couldn't see anything. So what happened was they said, well, maybe you'll come out a little later, so maybe let's go to the mikvah. The Rebbe goes to the mikvah. So So when the Rebbe wanted to make mikvah, suddenly he took his coat off and threw it off, and he grabbed the towel, and he ran outside, and he started going like this. Just like this. Just like, almost like a wavy motion. Suddenly, the clouds parted slightly, and the moon appeared, but only in that spot. The guy who told me the story was an eyewitness to the event. That's it, and stopped. They said the prayers, and as soon as they finished, it closed it again. Yes. I just want to give you the understanding of what that kind of a person is, and the koyach, or the power of that kind of person. And I say the person who told me literally witnessed it. In fact, he said to Rebbe, he said, this is extraordinary. Do you have any? He said to him, this is just extraordinary what just happened. So the Rebbe said, it is better not to talk about these things. That's all. It was incredible. There were a number of witnesses to that. And the person literally was there at the time. That's what I mean by they literally could subvert reality. Now this doesn't make sense to us. When you attain that level of kedusha, that level of vegas, that level of closeness to God, it is so powerful that you're literally imbued with enormous spirituality. Not only in terms of what you know, but what you can do. Obviously, that's not an easy level to reach. It's not. It takes a lot of work. A lot of work. And that's really what it is. A lot of work. It takes a lot of work just to reach that level. Can you reach that level? Yes. If you want to. If you really want to, you can. But it is not easy. Obviously, this man's Olam Haba is totally different than that man's Olam Haba. A Tzaddik's Olam Haba bears no resemblance to a Yosher's Olam Haba. Obviously. Because the fundamental principle is the level of Dveikus, the level of love of God, nearest to God, that you establish while you are alive now is the level of Dveikus you will have in Olam Haba. That is the fundamental principle. Your reward is Dveikus. Olam Haba is nothing more than a state of being when you are constantly aware of God, where you experience God in an ecstatic way without any barriers. That's what Olam Haba is. The degree in which you will achieve that depends on the degree in which you will achieve it here. Every mitzvah counts. Every one. Every time you do a mitzvah and you try and think what you're doing, it gets you closer. Now, how do you establish this kind of a posture? Well, there are a number of ways. And for those who are interested in trekking on that journey, I can tell you two basic concepts. Okay? One involves davening, the other involves mitzvahs. Mitzvahs. Every time you go to a mitzvah, it is important to go to a mitzvah not just to do it, but to think that while I do this mitzvah, I am doing this mitzvah to get closer to God, and consciously do it with that in mind. That maybe I myself wouldn't want to do the mitzvah. Truth of the matter is, it may be inconvenient, it may be uncomfortable, it may be distressful, or financially difficult, but I am doing it because it is His will, and it brings Him simcha. If you think along those lines, in every time you do a mitzvah, you will find gradually your heart and soul opening up slowly. The second way to achieve that is through davening. When you daven, know who you're davening to. Think about the Hashem. Don't ever talk when you daven. Never. Be there. Think of the davening in terms of what is being said and what this experience, or more so this opportunity is. And when you are davening, where you daven, you are talking to God, what you should do is, in the davening itself, say to God, to open your neshama up. Ask God directly to do it. Tell Him it is a very difficult thing. You give me the strength to be able to do it. Guide me along, because ultimately, the experience of the Vegas comes from God Himself. It is He who gives you the ability to open up your neshama to have that. So it not only takes work on your part, but you literally have to daven for it and ask God for that. It's very worthwhile to say some Tillim, several chapters of Tillim every day, a couple of tefillah, just for that purpose. That the Baruch Hashem should give you the ability to know Him and to love Him. You see. That is not an easy thing. But if you want this objective enough, that's what you have to do. These things combined together will make a different person out of you. In 6 months, if you do these things, you will not be the same person. I guarantee it. Yes.
With a relationship with a man and a woman, how does that take away or enhance?
You mean, does the Tzaddik have a nice marriage life? Is that what you want to know?
Yeah.
Right? Do I have to answer that question?
Well, basically, I mean, you put it in a
What's
very
the difference,
simplified...
really?
No,
Are we holding at this point that we want to know what type of marriage life the person has? Really?
You're not understanding the point.
Okay.
Okay, the point of the question is that you, for example, in Christianity,
No, I understand.
marry
No.
because they can have that.
I understand what you're saying.
Okay.
Marriage is
So
a
that-
critical part of attaining this level.
That's what I'm asking.
Right, there's no celibacy in this side. Oh, if that's what you're saying, okay, I'm sorry. No, right. Celibacy is an inhibition to obtaining Vegas. The only one who ever remained celibate, really, was Moshe Rabbeinu, and that was only after he married. Once Moshe Rabbeinu went up to the mountain and received the Torah, he never again went with his wife. Never again. You see.
But I'm not only talking about celibacy.
Yes, but that was Moshe Rabbeinu for a different reason. You will never find any tzaddik, any chassid, any kaddish in all of Jewish history that has ever been celibate by reason of true conviction. Maybe you couldn't find a shidduch, but that's something else. Right? That's something else. Because that is not the case. Marriage is a very critical component of achieving that type of level. It's not impossible to achieve it without marriage, but marriage is an important point with it. It does have certain effects on marriage life, of course, because obviously if individuals are preoccupied with Vegas and these things, it's going to be a more difficult marriage in certain ways, but there are times he will not be able to be there for his wife. If his wife is a very needful person, and so on, she's not going to have a husband that often. I mean, the kind of woman who could be married to this kind of a person has to be an extraordinary woman herself. You see. So there's got to be a certain parity over there.
Maybe because I'm single and I'm not married, there's a whole sense of a woman serving her husband, so to speak. And I just wanted to know. I mean, like, for example, you have like something like Older Law, okay, where you have a woman who's totally subservient
To the husband, yeah. What do you want to know about?
Well, what my question is, what I'm saying is, so in order to reach such a holy level, you're saying you have to be completely subservient in your marriage?
No, I didn't say that at all. You have to have a good relationship with your husband. But a woman who's married to a tzaddik generally has her own journey. She's not subservient to him. She doesn't exist as an automaton to serve him so that he goes higher and she remains the same. She has her own avodah. She has her own work. You see what I'm saying?
This does, Chef.
Right. She's also capable of Vegas. What's the difference? Now that her husband's Vegas cannot bring her to be a David. You see? If he becomes a tzaddik, she doesn't automatically become a tzaddik as well because she's married to him. There's no ruchnis in a marriage license. You know? It doesn't spread over, you know? It's your own job. You got to do it yourself. In that respect, she's not subservient. Now, there's certain aspects of a marriage require that. Well, that depends on the way Yiddish guys Torah defines marriage. You see, It defines marriage in a certain type of relationship. Obviously, the Torah looks at a marriage differently than the way we look at a marriage today in 20th century America. It is quite different. But I don't want to go into that. That's not the point of the shir. Okay.
But the intimacy between two people in lieu of that, could that help also, in terms of...
Yes. On the contrary, it does.
It's almost equation that it does.
Yes. But when you reach a certain level, you see, the problem is, one of the problems is that the feeling, the love of God, when it's reached, is so much more powerful than the love of a woman in the comparison to, that tzaddikim begin to shift over. It's just a natural part. You see. Because the relationship of a man and woman, the love of a man and woman is one neshama to another neshama, you see, or one neshama to its partner, and the relationship of a person to God is a neshama to its creator. Can you compare the two? No. That's why. It's not that tzaddikim or chassidim want to neglect their marriage. Chas v'shalom. They are enormously sensitive and careful about their wives, you see. But they are just automatically drawn into a different sphere, in a sense. You see. And hopefully the wife would be on a level where she can accommodate that. You see.
Before I understood that.
But Moshe was an exception to the rule because of other reasons. But even Mashiach will be married. Right? And who's got a higher ruchnik than the Mashiach, right? Even Mashiach will be married. And have kids. Just one wife? I don't know if there's a handle anymore. If you're lucky if you can fulfill the needs of one wife. Okay? I think I've given you a pretty good understanding. Now this is a very strange form of Judaism. The unfortunate thing is, I don't know, to what extent were you people aware of everything I said tonight? Probably to some degree. But in the way that I said it, probably very little. But this is the heart. If you don't know this, you do not know what it's about. Period. Now, how can I say this is an absolute statement? Because what I say is, this is true. If you didn't know what I said tonight, the truth is you knew very little. Because this is what a Jew really is. This is a Jew on different levels. These are the goals. This is the key experience. The key thing. That's what you're trying to achieve. Through davening, through mitzvahs, and through learning. There was one more thing. I said that there were two techniques to increase dvekas, right? Davening first, understanding your davening process, and literally davening to God to help you in that process. One, working at the mitzvahs, constantly aware that you're doing these things for the Baruch Shalom, to be close to Him. Here's a third thing, which is just as important, extremely important. And what's that? To learn hashkafa. Why? Because the truth of the matter is what hashkafa does. Hashkafa, which is what we do here, tells you what it's about. It tells you who the Baruch Shalom is. It tells you what your relationship must be. Not a lot more than it tells you how God guides history. When you see that, you literally can become close to the Baruch Shalom. If you don't know hashkafa, if you don't know all these things, then you don't know really God is a mysterious, nebulous, vague, confusing figure. You don't know really who He is, what He wants, how He acts, you'll never know. And because of that, you cannot. And God really is invisible. God is invisible perceptually. But if God is invisible intellectually, you're at a tremendous disadvantage. No person can become a true tzaddik or a true chassid unless he has a very good understanding of hashkafa. That's why these shurim are so important. Because they attempt to give you the understanding what it's about. In fact, it's this shir which is telling you this entire thing. You see. That's why hashkafa is so important. Because without it, you do not know what it really means to be a Jew. The way they used to know. You see, now they say, well, go to shul, daven, eat kashrus, whatever the story is. But that's an enormously superficial understanding of what it means to be Jewish. We have lost the essence of a Jew. That's what it is. We no longer are knowledgeable of what it really means to be Jewish. I am telling you what it means to be Jewish. But I am telling you something which was known only 100 years ago, only 50 years ago. 100 years ago by many, many people. And which is not known essentially today. Which is almost lost. And I'm not talking about people who learn a great deal, do not know this anymore. Because of our sins, God has taken away this information from us. Because we are no longer worthy of this madrega, of this level. But I am telling you what this is about, and what once every Jew knew, and what every Jew felt when he walked by the Beit HaMikdash. Is it worthwhile attaining? Then just let me leave you with that thought. To the degree that you obtain the vacant chair, in whatever level you can. That's the degree you will experience it in Haba. No more, no less. Now you must remember, even if a person is very superficial, and just davens or does a mitzvah or whatever, that is the level of vacant. It is a very small level, but it is a level. Let's not knock it. But there are levels, levels. Olam Haba, in its essence, is nothing more than a level of dveikus. That's all it is. It is a situation or a circumstance of dveikus. It is a recognition and it is a closeness to God and His spiritual koyach. That is the greatest simcha and pleasure which is possible. The degree, the amount that you will earn in the future world, which in that time, all there will be dveikus, nothing else. Depends on how much you want it now, how much you're willing to fight for it, how much you're willing to put yourself out to get it. That's where it's at. Now, I don't want people to leave here and suddenly start feeling terrible because they're not there. These take years of effort. This is no small effort. But as the Chinese say, even a journey of 1,000 miles begins with one step. So let it be by steps, but keep on walking. Because the day that you stop is the day that you conclude what you're all about. That's it.
Did you, when they had it, did they learn to stuff it too?
Yeah, sure.
The only Jewish souls that intuit this Hashem's will.
Goyim are capable of certain levels of dveikus. It depends. It's a very complicated question. I don't know how to deal with it. It's something which is a serious trade. When you get me Goyim and Jews,
We've been having to talk a lot about the problem of being American, being raised, let's say, with a very egalitarian approach to what people can attain.
yeah, but that's not true. You are born with essentially the maximum level. You are born with a certain level. You see, some people are born with very strong sensitivities to ruchnius. Other people are very dull and insensitive to ruchnius. You see.
Well, I'm not talking about that as an individual, though, I'm talking about looking at God. It's something I'm looking forward to. Sure, they've got to be.
Oh, there are vast.
But also
We've got to wait to know this.
People that can really attain it.
Please listen to Series 1, Page 6. Now, for the people who have missed this year, it is unfortunate, because I am not repeating it. Give them the notes, whatever the story is, they have the tape, whatever. It is obviously a very important year. I would think, this situation. It's something to think about. Something to go home and really think about very carefully.
Especially for society in general, in America and in the world, where you don't even have leaders of the world that you have
been in Los Angeles at the time this happened, you would have been blown out of your seat.
Well, I mean, just being in the show about the giraffe gives you.
Well, he has refused to be a figure of that stature. I personally do not know, because I'm not familiar with him. But his reputation is one of that. What?
Being a woman is different. But the energy that I watched the job, it's like, it's amazing.
Well, it's subtle, because that's not necessarily so. Unfortunately, we don't see these people anymore. We don't see Kedoshim. But Moshe Feinstein, for example, is such an individual. Oh, he's a classic Tzaddik. Classic.
He's up there too.
Classic Tzaddik.
When do you start? Do you
There
get?
are very few such people. I have been privileged that I've seen a number of them. See, and I've had some really close conversations with some of them. Really close conversations. But it's very, very difficult to meet these people normally.
You also get a very.
Oh, what? Oh, well, he's not there now. But you could see him. Yeah, he's okay. Yes. He's not well, why? Now, probably not. Probably not.
You also get a sense of your being in exile. Also, that becomes very strong.
I don't know what you mean.
I mean, a lot of people here don't feel that a Jew is in exile.
We're not in touch with what we lost.
No, but I'm saying when you start going up the ladder, don't you get a strong sense of it?
Yes. When you go up the ladder, you begin to really know what Golos is. Because you see that here. Really true.
Yeah.
You truly appreciate what Golos is. That's what it is. We are totally out of contact with what Jews used to be and what once there once was. That's how lost we are. And we don't even know it. It's an astounding thing.
It's so hard to
It's an astounding
that
thing.
people at this level and allow themselves to be able to humanity as well. You know what I mean? To be able to
Because obviously, yes, at any
see
point,
that and
but whatever level you're at, there's always a Yetzirah, which is there, trying to always shepherd you.
It's really not lost, Rabbi. It's inside you. You just have to open
Well,
it up.
you people now know about it.
Yeah, but you have to
You
open
people
it
are,
up.
in a certain sense,
You have
this is a very privileged group. I mean, really.
You're not here by accident.
Whatever it is, you are a privileged group. You people now know about it. You know what was once lost. You
But
can go
it's
home and you can
not
think about it.
lost.
Wait. You can go home and you can think about it. Unfortunately, there are a lot of people who cannot. So if you can convey this information to other people, that would be a very great service. That would
But
be
you
a very
can
great service.
open up your neshama, just like
You
the
cannot do that. It's not a simple matter. It is not a simple matter.
You have to work at it to love
And you have to work at it. Yes, and you have to work
The
at it slowly.
bigness is right in you.
If you work at it, yes. But no, it's not. No matter what you work, you will never feel what they would feel when the Beis HaMikdash was there. Make no mistake about that. The Beis HaMikdash is gone. That level which Jews were once at is gone. We will not have that until the Mashiach comes. But you can experience very high levels of Dvekas if you work at it. It's not all lost. Next week, we will meet at 305 West 69th Street. And I hope we will have the same Hatzlocha there that we've had here. Basically. We've been here for about 3 months. We've gone through a lot of hashkafa and a lot of stuff. We've dug through a lot of ruchnias, whether we realize it or not. We've really dug a lot of stuff, and hopefully we will have the same hashkafa. I again will be leaving in 2 weeks from today, and so on. And my brother, yes, you will get the announcement, I'll tell you. And my brother will be here, and he will continue on a similar vein, except he will shunt off to a different direction, because I asked him not to. I don't want him to replicate, to go over what I've done, because we have a slightly different style. And I build it up, I try and create the building in a different way that he does. And so he's going to go into his own mini series of Ashkafa and so on.
so
Next week we will be at Rav Shlomo Kaba Shul there. Yes.
how long
Oh, I will be there next week, the week after, and then I will be gone for approximately 6 to 8 weeks, which is quite a gap. quite a hiatus, but
You'll be prepared before Pesach.
you know, what's that?
You'll be here before Pesach.
Well, I hope to. If not, my brother will be in Pesach share. He's got one today on Pesach.
And Purim, too.
The truth of the matter is, the Pesach share that I have is really to advance. It's a very good share, but my brother, I think, will be able to give a bit. You know, I should be back before then, so on. But in any case, you know, we will start then, and I intend to be back and to continue on this program. And I would hope that everyone can see who's coming.
Well, you have the Purim share in your series.
Yes, that's an advanced share. It's 5 share.
Can't you buy it?
Yeah. Oh.
To want it. Is there any possibility of
I would like to add one thing.
anyone
For those people, one thing. Well, okay. Next. For those people, you know, there's some people who are up to date on the, on the fees, and some people aren't. If it's possible, by the time we get that, you know, in 2 weeks, if possible, I would like to have everyone up to date. So I will tell each one. Actually, Laura will, because Laura is now in charge of it. We'll tell each one essentially what